That is a very awesome intro, man. You're gonna have to tell me who did that for you. Well, hey everybody. My name is Brandon, aka the Brando Critic, and this is my very first panel that I'm ever doing at a virtual film festival. So I just want to thank Joe for having me on here. And today, so a lot of people know that I work for a film studio here in Vancouver. And when I was talking to Joe about doing a panel, he said, "Well, why don't you take us behind the scenes of what really goes on in the pre-production stages of filmmaking up there?" And where I live, Vancouver, it's called Hollywood North. And the reason why we call it that is because other than Toronto, Vancouver seems to be a very giant hotspot for Hollywood filmmaking. And I believe that's because of the tax credits. It's just very, very cheap for Hollywood to bring up their films up here because we have the crews, we have the studio space. Vancouver as a city is able to play the backdrop for, like, if you need an American cityscape. We play Seattle and New York a lot. Vancouver is the place to go. If you need like the California winery type of area, we have that too. We have the Okanagan. If you need the winter, right? If you need the mountains and the forest, we got that too. So Vancouver is a very big backdrop for a lot of different places, and Hollywood loves to do that, right? And we have all the crews here. We have a lot of different unions, a lot of local talent, right? Because a couple people have come from Vancouver into the mainstream. A couple off the top of my head, we know we have like Ryan Reynolds is probably like the biggest one. Seth Rogen, Marty McFly himself, Michael J. Fox. But anyways, so what I thought I'd do first is I have a list here of all the movies that were filmed up here. And just, I wanted to go through this because, sometimes people will ask like, oh, well, what really gets filmed up in Vancouver? What is actually going on up there? Like, you might just get your local Canadian content. You might get some small TV shows, but you won't get like a big movie. Well, it's surprising how many big movies. And it's funny how when growing up, I'll watch movies and then you start to see different landmarks. You're like, oh, that's just down the street from me. It's very, very interesting. So anyways, I have this list here. So these are all movies filmed in my backyard. And this is not including TV shows because we film a ton of TV up here. So anyways, we have 50-50, 2012, The A-Team, the Liam Neeson one. Almost every Air Bud movie is filmed up here. Are We There Yet with Ice Cube? Big Eyes, the Tim Burton one. The Butterfly Effect, Cabin in the Woods, Catwoman, Chronicle, Deadpool 1 and 2, the Descendants franchise with the Disney, like the sons and daughters of all the Disney villains. The Diary of a Wimpy Kid franchise, Edge of 17, Elektra, Elf, Elysium. And funny thing about Elysium is that Neil Blomkamp actually went to one of our local film schools here in Vancouver. So that is a byproduct of the city for sure. Both Fantastic Four movies, or at least the 2005, 2007 ones. So Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four, The Rise of the Silver Surfer. The 50 Shades of Grey franchise. And funny thing about that is that I was actually an extra in the first movie. We have the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, the Final Destination franchise, Freddy Got Fingered, Godzilla, the 2014 one, Happy Gilmore, Hot Rod, that one was filmed just down the street from me, Hot Tub Time Machine, I Love You, Beth Cooper, I, Robot, Insomnia, The Interview, Jumanji, the first Jumanji with Robin Williams, Juno, Legends of the Fall, Liar Liar, Man of Steel, Miracle, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, the first two Night at the Museum movies, the Percy Jackson franchise, the Pink Panther, the Steve Martin one. Where am I here? Right. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Power Rangers, the most recent one, First Blood or Rambo, Predator, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, as well as War of the Planet of the Apes. And I believe Dawn was filmed here too. Rocky IV, Rumble in the Bronx, Santa Claus 2, the Scary Movie franchise, the Scooby-Doo live action movies, Sonic the Hedgehog, Star Trek Beyond, Ted, Titanic, Tomorrowland, Tron Legacy, the entire Twilight series, Warcraft, Watchmen, X-Men 2, X-Men Last Stand, and X-Men Origins Wolverine. So there is quite a bit of high-end movies that do come up here. Now, I might as well go into my story of how I joined the film industry. Obviously, like a lot of people, I grew up watching movies, and I believe it was when I saw Spider-Man in the theaters when I really fell in love with just the craft of filmmaking. And I saw Pirates of the Caribbean around that same time, and I grew up with Harry Potter, and Shrek was a movie that we watched all the time. And like, so I come from that generation of movies. And then when I graduated high school, which was in 2013, I went straight to Capilano University. And you can't really see it. I don't know if I can change my webcam, but my degree is right up there. So that's my film degree that I have framed. And I did the full 4 years. And I learned a ton in that time. And what was great about it was that all of the instructors and all of our professors were people in the industry. And like my cinematography teacher did the cinematography for Stargate, the entire show. So it wasn't just people who just read a textbook and then would try to teach it to you. They were in the industry. So I learned a ton from that. And you learn a lot more like later on in film school. Of course, in the first year, you learn about editing and you learn about directing and you learn about how to move a camera and all that, basic stuff. But then later on, it teaches you about things in, how do I say this? You learn more about the philosophy of the movies and like the whys. First off, you got to learn the hows and you learn the whys. And then after film school, after the 4 years, I was thinking like I made my short film and I was almost kind of done with that. And one part of filmmaking that I wasn't really a big fan of at the beginning was producing, the more business side of it. And that turned out to be the path I would end up going on. I wanted to be an editor and I wanted to like write scripts. But after doing it myself, it was a fun experience and it was one of the best experiences of my entire life. And I was almost done with it. And I said, you know what, that's my magnum opus and I'm good. And what was another part of it for me too is when you go into like the writing and directing and the more creative elements of filmmaking, one bad film can almost derail your career. Almost. Again, there's people who have come back from it, but when you're in the 9 to 5 area of filmmaking, because it is a business, then you're almost guaranteed work. And I ended up going into there was a film studio called Manhattan Beach Studios based out in New York. And they just moved up to Canada. There was a company called Hollywood Rentals. And that's where I ended up working. And I was just on the floor, right? And so basically in the warehouse business of film gear, you have grips, which is basically like the stands and rigging gear. So if you need like a light on the ceiling hanging down a certain number of feet, then the grips would be the ones to lay all the pipe and make sure that everything is rock solid. And then the electrics team would end up working with all the lights. And basically they were going through a bunch of company pay cuts and I ended up getting laid off my first month in. But then the next day they called me in and said, we need somebody to drive around to all these different film sets and deliver gear, go down to other film warehouses and other film studios to pick up gear to do different sub rentals. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't go to film school to become a driver, right? I had to drive the big 5-ton truck and I didn't want to go down that route. But I said, you know what? You have to start somewhere. So because of that, I was driving around to every single film studio. I was driving to every single set and I was making a ton of connections. And then when I had to drive to my current company, William F. White, and they said, like, after a while, like I became friends with everyone. I became friends with the managers. I became friends with the other shows that were working there at the time. And I became like just a part of that family almost. And they said, well, Brandon, all you need to do is just work here. And I wanted to get up to a certain position in that company. And then I applied and then I got the job. So I started working on the floor in the grip department. So, making sure that the stands and the fabrics and the green screens and a lot of that just heavy hardware stuff. So basically what my job was, we would have all on our walkie-talkies and you'd have these things come in and go, all right, hey, Arrow season 6 is in Bay 2. They're picking up the order for the guy's warehouse. And then you'd go on your orders and then you'd say, okay, they've ordered this many lights, this many stands, this many cameras. And I'd be in charge of making sure that all their grip stuff, all their stands and all their heavy hardware was right. And then when they were to return it, I'd make sure that it was all working properly. And it was very hands-on. And, when you go to film school, you want to be the next Tarantino, right? You want to be the next David Fincher. And a lot of people don't consider that there's so much behind the fact of just the director, of the costume department and the makeup and the producing and the like the editing and the production design. There's so much behind that too, where it's like you need a bunch of gear to make sure that you can even film the damn thing. So, and you got to make sure all that works, and you got to make sure that the studio space is there. You got to make sure that all the safety cones are, and like you got to make sure all the insurance is in right. So the amount of paperwork that goes into movie making is just insane, and it's the stuff that people don't normally see. So I ended up doing that for a while, and then I moved over to the electrics, and they said, all right, this Brandon guy, he knows a lot about this stuff already from film school, and we just need to get him making sure that he knows what like a Kino flow fixture is. We need to know what a Mambo combo stand is. You know, all this different lingo that's on set. So I ended up going to the LX department and learning about all the different lights that they use. And that's when I started to make a lot of big connections, you know, because that was with grips and stuff, you normally just talk to the drivers, right? Oh, I'm here to pick up this, I'm here to pick up that. And so when you're talking to other drivers in the industry, you're not making the bigger connections, if that's what I want to say. But, you know, you're learning about, when you're in the LX department, you're talking to all the gaffers. And the gaffers on film sets are the people who talk directly to the cinematographers. So making sure that all the electrics are there. So if you see, you know, if Roger Deakins says, all right, I need this shot to look like this, how can we make these lights work? The gaffers are the guys to talk to. And then so I'd be talking directly to them. So they're like, okay, well, we need to make this green screen effect for The Flash. I need to make it look this way for Riverdale. We need to make it look this way for Sonic the Hedgehog. Okay, so we're going to use all these different lights. So I had to learn all about that. And then once I was done that, I moved to the rentals desk. And that was when you had to do all the phone calling. And moving up from there, I am now considered a CSR, a client service representative. And that's when you do the real heavy lifting, even though I'm not actually moving. I'm actually sitting at a desk now. So basically what happens is where I work, you know, we have our sales team. They go down to all the different trade shows in LA and Las Vegas and all these different things and saying, all right, hey, Disney, we know that you have this new movie coming up, and we want to say that we'll have everything you need. We have all the studio space. We have the teams that can help you out. We have all the gear. We have all the trucks. We have all the crews. We have everything that you need. And so basically, as soon as, and this is the thing too, a lot of studios and a lot of different warehouse companies, they're with the studios with Disney and 20th Century Fox. Well, I guess 20th Century Fox is now Disney, but with Paramount and Universal, it's a lot of, well, we'll give it to you at this price. We'll give it to you at this price. We'll give it to you at this price. And it's a big discount war. And eventually when they say, all right, we'll go with you. Okay, we're going to need this much studio space, this many cameras, this many this. And they go, okay, so now you need a CSR. You need the middleman to facilitate all your needs. That's what I do. So as of right now, I am now the assistant CSR for Flash, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist Season 2, a show called Midnight Mass. I believe it's coming to Netflix. I believe it's a Stephen King adaptation. I'm not too sure about that, so don't quote me on that. And Nancy Drew. I believe it's going to be Season 2, I think. So I'm now the assistant CSR for them. But because I'm pretty new to that, I'm still doing a lot of the independent short films and web series and YouTube series and a lot of just the smaller weekend shoots. We're going to be shooting for a week. It's not really a high budget, only a couple $1,000s. So basically what happens is the crew will go for a tech scout. You know, they say, all right, we have our script highlighting all the things that we need. Okay, what do we need to film all these scenes? And then they give me a gear list. We need this many lights. We need this many effects. We need this many green screens because we want to do this. So I go through it and I say, okay, guys, if this is your budget, you are way over budget. And most of the time that's what happens because most of these independent filmmakers don't actually know how much this stuff costs. If you break just one sky panel, which is like the most popular light to use because it's an LED light and you have different effects. You can do like cop effect on the back and it just flashes blue, white, and red. That's going to cost you like 50 grand, right? In terms of when you break it, right? That's what you got to pay for. But when we sell it to you or when we rent it to you, we're going to give you a big discount because we want you to work with us. It might not be as much as 50 grand, but you know what I'm saying? Lights do cost that much sometimes, the replacement cost. And so what they do, they go through the gear list and say, okay, well, we don't need to use this. We don't need to use that. It's a lot of different cutting corners, if you will. It's not like any other customer service industry where you're doing like kitchen countertops where you get a quote and you go, okay, well, that's what we need, right? With filming, it's a lot of like if you guys have made films in your backyard, you guys have made films in your garage with your iPhones or with your steady cams, or like back in the day, we had the old camcorders making those. So of course you got to make do with what you got, right? So, okay, we need to make a lightning effect. Well, let's get a light and get some pans, and like you can do it all guerrilla style. So they have their gear list and they have to try to cut it down as fast as they can. And it's not like, just having to get a quote. Okay, great. But it's a lot of working with the crews to see what they need and what they want and getting their budgets in order. Once that's done, then we tell the floor, okay, they're going to be showing up on this day at this time. And because of this whole pandemic thing, we didn't actually have the booking by appointment. And what would happen is shows would just come to our door anytime and say, okay, we need this. And it was always just, pardon my language, but it was a shit show of just people running around and trying to get all these different things. And, they're saying, oh, well, we got to go to camera at 4:00. And then they show up at 3 and wanting us to pull all this stuff. And it was a nightmare. We got it done. I can't thank our crews enough. And when I was on the floor, we'd have like, I remember one day it's like, okay, we got a TV movie called The Heart of Texas showing up. We got to pull all this gear. And we had to just go and make sure that it's clean. We got to make sure that it's working. We got to test it all. It was a big process. But nowadays, what we're trying to do, sorry, I just read a comment and my train of thought went away. But you had to get it all done. But nowadays, what we're doing is we're booking by appointment only. So we're telling the film crews, which film is a go thing, and it's very on the fly. You have to be ready for anything to happen. It's not like, okay, at 8 a.m. we show up. At 8:50, then we have breakfast. And then at 9, we go to camera. And then the actor's going to makeup. Things never go according to plan in the film industry. They never go according to the plan. And by us trying to tell the crews that you have to book a time 24 hours in advance, it's a learning curve for all of us. And it's because of the pandemic. We don't want people to come in because, especially with film gear, you have a bunch of crews touching just certain gear, certain knobs and things, and it's going onto a film set with a bunch of different people, and then it's coming back into a certain place. So that is just one big appetite for disaster for spreading things around with this whole pandemic going on. So we have to do a lot of cleaning procedures, and we got to do a lot of different quarantine procedures with the gear, and we got to make sure that everyone is, having a mask and having gloves on in the warehouse. And it has been a learning curve, but I'm very proud of our guys. It's iced tea, by the way. It's not beer. Don't worry. I'm not an animal. It's a little early for that. I'm going to wait for the Canucks game later on to start drinking. But yeah, so that's what I do. So I take all the phone calls and saying, hey guys, it's like 100 degrees out here. We need a 7K Honda generator because we need to get them air conditioning. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't fit in your budget. Hey man, can you make this work? Can you talk to our guys? And then you call the production office and go like, hey guys, can we try to lend a hand? And of course, it's a business too, right? Because we don't want those shows to go to our competitors. So we'll go, hey, you know what? Okay, we'll give you a discount on this at like a 75% discount. Oh, well, the guys down the street will give us 80%. Okay, if that's the case, then we'll give you this, and it's kind of like a bidding war for all the different shows, right? So our competitors seem to do more of the feature length movies, like they did all the Deadpool ones, but we find that TV shows, there's a lot more gear that goes in and out of the building, because with the feature, they normally know exactly what they want when they need it, because a feature film, it's obviously a higher budget and there's a lot more planning that goes into place, and they know what they're going to be filming. Okay, great. With a TV show and with a series, there's a lot of different episodes going around. So there's a high turnaround and there's a lot more gear being rented, which actually means that we get more money. So that's the name of the game, right? You just got to get money. And so that's basically what I do. I sit at a desk and I have quite a few shows going on right now, a lot of independent films. And basically I just make sure that all their gear needs are met. So we have one comment in here from Haley T. Joe, do you want to bring that up? Yeah. Okay. So Haley T says, do you have any great stories about someone spectacularly breaking something? I mean, like there's a lot of different things. Like I know that there was one where, so the fabric department, we rent a solid it's just a black piece of duvetine, right? Like black cloth. And most of the time that's to like block out the sun or to use a nighttime effect. So it's like a 20 by 20 frame, 2 stands, and we have black duvetine in there. And most of the time they are heat resistant. But I don't know what they were doing. They had like I think it was like 100K soft sun, which is supposed to replicate the sun. It's this big, ginormous light. You need 4 people to carry it. And they have it, 100 feet in the air. Not 100 feet, but they had it, I think, right next to it. And they just like melted the crap out of it. And it's flame resistant. And they just completely burned it. We've come back with stands being bent like this. We've had lights being smashed. One of the most famous ones was, again, I haven't seen this firsthand, but I heard from a lot of people before my time that, so a little bit of backstory. When you go into the film industry, it's always about who you know, right? But when it comes to just people like just holding the stands and, doing the sound, just like the guy with the boom mic, a lot of them, they don't have any experience. It's not like you need to go through this whole entire process to try to get film work. Well, because there's so much, especially in Vancouver, there's always something being filmed. Always. It's very rare not to see a film production when you go downtown. You're going to see at least one street closed off. You're going to go, or especially in the suburbs, you're going to have at least some filming. There's some like there's a town called Fort Langley, and it's a kind of an old timey town. It's very like Lady and the Tramp, 1900s Americana style, and they're always filming there. And I believe, like, I remember I saw Larry the Cable Guy just walk out, and then I'm like, Larry the Cable Guy, what the hell is he doing? And, oh, okay, I see all the cameras, and I see a bunch of dogs walking by. Like, they think they're filming Dog's Way Home there as well, but a lot of people, because there's so many film productions going on, they're desperate for crew. They go, hey, are you available for 12 hours a day? And the guys will go, yep. Okay. Can you hold a stand? Can you follow orders? Yep. Okay. You're hired. And a lot of people who are just doing the grunt work in the film industry are ex-convicts. They are people who are getting out of rehab, or they're people who, just don't really have much experience. You have like, I remember this one guy, he was talking about how he would work 14 hours a day here. He's 50 years old, but then he would go down to Uganda and spend all his money on hookers and cocaine and drugs and booze and all that stuff. And just has a huge party down there. And he's like, but I'm not a weirdo though. I'm not a weirdo. I'm a nice guy. I'm a normal guy, but that's just how I live. So the lifestyle of people on set is very different. And I remember they told me that one time a dolly, right, a camera dolly, came back with cocaine on it. And that doesn't surprise me in the slightest when you start to know these people who actually work on these film sets. So again, that's not something that they broke, but cocaine came back once on a dolly. I didn't get to see it with my own eyes, but a lot of people told me, that people I work with before I even started working there, that we did get a dolly back. And yeah, the film industry is a very interesting place. Like, because that's the thing too. Like when you think about, like when I was driving to all these different studios, I was working for the studio, right? I wasn't working for a single production. So I was working 9 to 5, and I was just driving around, and I'm getting paid, just like a normal wage for a warehouse job. And I'm like, oh God, this sucks. I went to film school for 4 years. Like, why am I just doing this for the rest of my life? I didn't do driving for very long. That's just, in my early 20s, just wondering, oh, what am I doing with my life? And then when you see people on set do the same job, and you're getting paid $45 an hour, and then overtime. And after 12 hours, it gets into, I think, double time. So overtime is time and a half. And then I think after 12 hours is double time. Then you're making like bank. And when you're doing like transport, when you're driving around like the actors in one of those vans from like the makeup to the set, and then from the crew to the, and just doing that, you're getting paid $45 to $50 an hour. I'm like, oh my God, like I'd be making in bank. But the thing is that if you work in the film industry, and I've noticed this, and again, there's always exceptions to the rule. Of course, I'm not saying that all filmmakers and all people in the film industry are like this, at least doing like the grunt work on set, like set work. But a lot of people, like the time, it's very, very time consuming. It's like 5 a.m. wake up call, get to the set at 6 a.m. and then you're working until about like 10 o'clock at night. wrap up everything, and then you're done at 11. And then it's start again. And you're doing that for 3 weeks straight. You know what I mean? You're making bank. You make bank though. And a lot of people in the film industry, when they do that, they don't have families, right? And I believe that I read somewhere that it's the film industry, at least on set work, that has the highest number of divorces, highest divorce rate, because most of the time, the people working on set are on set all the time. And a lot of those people are looking for just like the quick cash, and they don't have anything else going on in their lives. So they get all this money, and then what do? They just spend it, right? I know a lot of people in the film industry who have like just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked in their early days. And then when they hit 30, they're rich. They're very, very wealthy. And so what do? They buy the nice house. They buy the snowmobile. They buy a bunch of the toys. But unfortunately, the film industry is not a stagnant, that's not the right word I'm looking for. It's not always going, right? It's a very feast or famine industry. So then, like, I know people who have bought all that stuff, bought the nice car, bought the jet skis, bought snowboards, bought all the toys in the world. And then the industry kind of does a dip, and then they're not working. So what happens? They got to sell off all their stuff. And I'm thinking, like, if that's the life that you want, then go for it, right? And I was thinking, like, if I wanted to just work my ass off until I was 30 and then go into the family life and get the 9-to-5 job, or, you know, do something else, at least with all that experience, I could have done that. I could have. But then again, it's like people in that industry don't really have that much free time. Their friends are people on set, and it's a different lifestyle. And, you know, I'm a guy that, you know, was raised somewhat traditionally, and I wanted to have the family, and I wanted to have, I wanted to have a social life and everything. So I knew that set work wasn't for me. And, you know, working 14-hour days, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And of course I wanted to have this YouTube channel that I'm doing. So that's my main goal in life. And I'm using this as like the, you know, to pay the bills and the income. And I'm using those connections to obviously, you know, help this Brando Critic thing take off, which it has. You know, my, even my bosses are like, you know, man, Brandon, you watch a lot of trailers, huh? And that was after I reacted to all the DC fandom stuff. But so Joe asks, do you have any idea how the pay for crew in Vancouver compares to LA? Assuming it varies, but depending on the type of production. Honestly, I don't really know. I know that there's different unions that work in Vancouver, and like they get union pay, but I'm not too sure about LA. I'm sure that they're very, very similar. And, you know, when I was working for my old company, they were an American-based company, so it was always a bit of a political struggle between, you know, does the best gear go to LA? They have offices in, you know, Albuquerque, New Mexico. They have some in Vegas. They have one in Honolulu, and I'm like, oh my god, if I have to work in this company, please send me to Honolulu. Like, oh my goodness, they got one in I think they got one in Florida. They got one in Houston. They got one in Toronto, New York, Atlanta. You know, they have a bunch of different studios there, but the company I work for is Canadian only, and we just got bought out by Sunbelt Rentals, if you guys know about them. So that is kind of like our American forefathers now. So I'm not too sure about LA though. I do know that my old company, we talked to LA a lot more because there was we were sister companies for LA and for Canada, but I'm not too sure about that. But Joe, I hate to do this to you, but I need a quick bathroom break. So if you can host this just for a little bit longer, and I'm happy to take your guys' questions too. So and again, Joe, if you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But that's basically my story, and that's my sum up of what I do on a day-to-day basis and how the Vancouver film industry, at least from the equipment side, works. So if you guys will just give me one quick minute, I'll be right back.
Go relieve yourself. We'll be here. Yeah. All right. So one of the reasons I asked Brandon to come on was because the work that he does is so interesting. We're oftentimes talking about what is happening on the front end of films as critics. We're talking about what we see the finished product to be and what we believe it to be, the ins and outs, the positives and negatives. And in getting to know Brandon over the past year or so, you know, off and on, the different things that I'll hear about him working on, or, you know, when he's posting about the stuff that he's doing with work. He did a live stream a couple of weeks ago when he was actually working and showing like what he does. And it's just a fascinating piece of the puzzle especially when you think about the amount of money that's going into these productions. We often hear about these major budgets, and you kind of wonder, where does that go at? Where does all that money go when a portion of it definitely going to the actors, but where does everything else go? And then when you hear some of these prices and you hear about the different things that are happening behind the scenes and the different things they have to rent, whether that's the cloth that blocks out the sun or the lights or whatever it may be, it really starts to add up, and it's really kind of fascinating. On a different level, Vancouver has become such a huge location for, number one, for television shoots. I think you hear that all the time, people flying up to Vancouver. If you're ever watching any of the clips or live streams of different people from the CW shows in particular, they're always talking about flying up to Vancouver and spending time up there. But it's very interesting to see when a city like that doubles as other cities, and when it is that welcoming to outside productions or to productions in general, that it really does become like Hollywood North. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I just caught the tail end of that, but there is a video online. I didn't even think about this, but they did this whole video about how Vancouver never plays itself, and I have my own theories about that. Like, you guys remember AMC Movie Talk, kind of like Collider, like so, and the whole John Campea is Canadian too, and I actually wrote in to that show back in the day, and I actually got on and I said, so why do movies that take place in Canada, or at least film in Canada, don't take place in Canada in the stories of the movie? Like, actually, this is a funny one. There's a movie called Deck the Halls with Matthew Broderick and I think it's Kristen Chenoweth, I believe. And I forget who else was in it. It's like a Christmas movie. But they were filming just down the road from me, right? And I live in a suburb called Cloverdale. And you hear on the news, Cloverdale, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, that is the totally different end of the country. And I don't even know if there is a Cloverdale, Pennsylvania.
There is no.
There isn't. Okay. So I'm like, you just got to make something up then. And I'm like, so like, why is it that movies that are filmed here don't take place here? And their answer, they kind of sidestepped it. They said, well, they don't write that in the script. They just need to find a set for it. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And then one of the other women are like, well, I don't think Detroit or Chicago or wherever The Dark Knight was filmed is mad that Gotham takes place there. I'm like, yeah, but that's a fictional place. Like, of course, no one's gonna get jealous about that. But my honest opinion of that is that the general audience for most of these bigger movies is American, right? So they have to make movies for Americans. Of course, the Canadian box office is into the domestic box office. We're not international in terms of just the box office numbers. But I think it's because I don't think Americans would want to watch a movie that takes place in Canada. They want to watch a movie that takes place in LA. Want to take a movie that takes place in New York, Chicago, Miami, Seattle to a certain extent. But we have a building here, the Harbor Center, which has a top very similar to the Space Needle in Seattle. And what do? The building is just like a brick with a little thing on the top. It's a revolving restaurant. But what do? They CGI out the building, they put in the Space Needle, and they say Seattle, right? Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol being filmed on Granville Island, Seattle, and it shows right on screen. So I think it's because that either Americans don't know about Vancouver, I'm assuming, just general. They just don't want to watch a movie that takes place in Canada. But I'm not too sure. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. We play a lot of different places.
I'm looking at that building right now, and you're exactly right. The top of it totally looks like the Space Needle.
Yeah, the Harbor Center.
Yeah, I would bring it up if it would allow me right now, but it's not allowing me right now. Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, it looks really nice at night, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's if you guys ever come into Vancouver, if you have a date night, if you want to really impress them, take them there.
Have you taken any dates there? Is the question, yeah. Brandon?
It's I have not actually taken any dates there. That's like high end. I haven't found the queen yet to go up there yet.
All right, I'm going to share that real quick. Here's the picture of it.
Right.
Dating advice from Brando Critic.
So you see the lights in the background across the water.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what we're looking at right here, that's the harbor center, and that it does look like the top of the Space Needle in Seattle, and so that will, because when you see that in the background of movies, they'll always think like, oh, it's Seattle, so it's very easy to mask it as that. And in Seattle too, like Vancouver, there's the downtown area, then there's the river, or there's a bit of not lagoon, what's the word for it,
Like the harbor
area, right? So this is the North Harbor. There's a southern one too, but this is like the main one where all the imports come in. And on the north side is North Vancouver, and my film school is actually right off camera on the north side. On the right hand side, it just cuts it off. And on the left hand side, the way you can get over there, we have the downtown area. You have Stanley Park, which is I think as big as Central Park in New York City, maybe a bit bigger, but there's a big park that's kind of like lodged onto downtown, and there's a bridge that goes over it. It's called the Lionsgate Bridge, and as you see in a lot of different films before the movie starts, like the Hunger Games is one example. I think it shows Lionsgate, right? And that's like one of the intros, and that is for that bridge. Joe, can you pull it up? Lionsgate Bridge. And you can see it in Deadpool, right? In Deadpool 2, when they're playing Thunderstruck, when they're diving down, you can see that bridge. I believe it's Final Destination 5. I could be wrong. And that's the bridge that gets destroyed. In Tron Legacy, when they finally leave, spoiler alert, I guess, for Tron Legacy, when they both get out, and it shows like the city, and the girl, Olivia Wilde, is like, oh my God, this is the real world. That's the bridge that they're going over. And so that bridge, I think they CGI'd it once to make it look red for the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. I could be wrong on that one, but yeah, like it's funny when people come here, they go, like the one city that I got that a lot in was, well, LA and Paris. I'm walking down these streets and I'm like, I've seen this before somewhere in some movie. And when all my international friends come to visit, they always say like, oh, I've noticed this. I know where this is. Yeah. So that's the Lionsgate Bridge. And yeah,
I could totally see that doubling as the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah,
totally. I mean, which I find a little strange because you can find stock footage of the Golden Gate Bridge, no problem, right? But this is like our version, so the Lionsgate Bridge. But yeah, it is funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's kind of wild. Has that been more of a recent, and when I say recent, I'm using that loosely, but has that been like the past decade that you would say Vancouver's really built up in terms of filming, or was it has it always been that way and we were just ignorant to it?
I think it's finally getting a lot of recognition. Like so I took a Canadian cinema class, and everyone's like, Canadian cinema, what's that? And I totally agree with you, because in terms of Canadian content that is being made, my philosopher, he teaches philosophy too. My professor teaching that, he said, all right, guys, think of a donut. American cinema is the donut. The hole in the middle is international cinema. Canadian cinema is the hole within the hole. And the fact is that we don't have like the big studios that actually finance the movies. America has Disney, Universal, Paramount, you name them, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. And they're the ones who fund all these projects. So they're all American-based movies. We don't have that up here. We have this one group called Telefilm Canada, and it's a government-funded organization.
Oh, wow.
And they're the ones who will give grants to people to make movies. And I think I'm trying to think of just like a big movie that you guys might even know that Indian Horse was one that was out a couple years ago from Clint Eastwood. That one was a Telefilm production. Brooklyn with Saoirse Ronan. That was Telefilm. And I believe Night Hunter was the one that we're watching later.
Shout out to Night Hunter.
I know that one was filmed. That one was filmed in Manitoba, Winnipeg. Never been there though. But I know that going through that class, we learned about like how studios were being built up here, because we had a lot of the construction of Vancouver really happened in about the 80s. We had Expo 86. That was when that's when the skyscrapers started to show up. And that's when we had the Sky Train, which is like the subway, but it's going through the buildings above ground. So that showed up and all these different things. And I think that's when the film studios, at least the studio space, started to show up. And I know movies were filmed up here in the 80s. And I think, I know Toronto was filming more, but like films like, I think Top Gun, at least parts of it show up here, like at least for the aerial parts.
And
but
actually,
yeah, go for it.
Off of that real quick, there's a question here from Haley that I think kind of gets to that about construction in Vancouver deliberately being styled potentially to look like other places. Or
yeah, I was actually gonna. I saw that comment. I was gonna work myself into it.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. But it's a good question. But what I was gonna say was that, you know, I think lately, because Hollywood, the movies are getting bigger and the budgets are getting bigger and the box office numbers are getting bigger. I think Vancouver, obviously, like I mentioned, like a lot of the big like X-Men, right? Deadpool, you know, a lot of bigger movies nowadays are being filmed up here, and kind of like what Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson does in Hawaii, because he takes a lot of his movies there. The Jumanji movies, I think Journey to the Center of the Earth was being filmed there. He filmed another one there too, but like Kualua Ranch, they filmed Jurassic Park there and all that stuff. Like he likes to, since that he's Samoan, he wants to bring his productions there, and he wants to like make sure that that film industry is thriving. And right now, I think like the two biggest contributors for us right now are Seth Rogen, right? Like The Interview, right, was all filmed here, and Ryan Reynolds, right, because he's from Vancouver too. So he wanted to like, all right, guys, we need to bring Deadpool up to Vancouver. We filmed X-Men here before. He's in with the crews. And what's funny is, in film school, my first year, I had class every single day. The one day the class gets canceled, and I'm like, you know what? I don't actually need to go to school today. I'll just edit at home. The one day I don't show up, guess who decides to show up for a special presentation? Ryan Reynolds. However, though, he did talk about the industry just for a little bit, and he said, no pictures. I'm here just on my own free time. You know, I know the professors, and I know this crew. I know the people here, and I just want to talk. And one guy runs up there, takes a selfie, and he's like, all right, guys, I'm done. So apparently he ruined it for everybody. But that's what they're saying. I wasn't there, obviously. That was before Deadpool. I think that was 2013, 2014. So that was when he played it in X-Men Origins Wolverine. So they're the ones who are bringing Vancouver to the forefront in terms of industry. But to answer Haley's question, do you think that construction in Vancouver is deliberately styled to make it more international looking in order to maintain its use in the film industry? I don't think so. I don't think the people designing the city had the film industry in mind. So Vancouver is a city that's half like really central city hub, like New York and Chicago, and it's like a city like that, but it's so close to nature, and it's a very nature city. So you always have people who are very, very active, right? Like the Vancouver stereotype is like, do you want to like go to like Granville Island with our yoga mats and drink like coconut water and like meditate? And it's like the earthy hippie version of the hipsters from Seattle, right? So you know what I mean? That's like the stereotype for Vancouver people, and how we complain that it rains all the time. It does rain quite a bit in the fall and springtime, but in summertime you can't beat it. But yeah, that's the stereotype. But I know that when they were building the city, when the skyscrapers started to show up in the 70s and the 80s, was that they wanted to have livability in mind. And so when you have like the mainland, you have downtown, which you have like a harbor here, you have downtown, another harbor, and then the mountains like we just saw in the photograph. They wanted to have the skyscrapers apart and not so high that it blocks the view of the mountains in the background. So there are certain viewpoints that it's like, okay, there's building here, and you can look through and you can see the mountains and you can see the nature, and it's a lot of livability in mind. And I believe it's one of the only major cities that does not have a major highway going through it. And there was a big protest from the hippies in the 60s. They were going to build it. And that highway in Deadpool, you know, when like the main highway where the main movie takes place?
Yeah.
That is right beside our football stadium and our hockey arena. And they CGI it out, obviously. But that was supposed to be the main highway. And they said, we don't want our city to turn into Portland. We didn't want to turn into Seattle. We didn't have the I-5 going straight through. And I guess the I-5 goes down to LA as well. Mm-hmm. But but when it crosses the border, the I-5 turns into Highway 99 and it goes through the city. But they went, no, we don't want that. We want it to be a livable city. We don't want just cars going through all the time. So it's funny, a Vancouver here, and then the Trans-Canada Highway, which goes across the whole country, will go around it, and you have to go in that way. So it's built with livability in mind, and I don't think that. I think just the international looking, where you can make it look like a bunch of other places, it just is a coincidence, and it helped in their favor long term. They can go, you know what, we can actually we can make this look like New York. Yeah. We can make this look like Chicago. We can make this look like LA. We can make it look like everything. So there's a lot of different areas as well.
So Brandon, I went to find a picture of the movie that you were in to try to like embarrass you a little bit, but I actually found that quote or the comment from Real Talk from 7 years ago that you wrote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just popped up. It was so weird because you just mentioned it, but it's exactly what you were saying. Like, why is it that? My question is, why aren't movies that are filmed in Canada take place in Canada? It seems to be that we have to disguise Canada to look like the United States.
Yeah, I think that's just a marketing thing. You know, like my sister was the perfect age when Twilight came out, right? And Twilight. I think the story takes place in Forks, Washington.
Yep.
So northern Seattle area. And it's funny, I live only 10 minutes away from the border. So 10 minutes, I'm there. And then you can go down to Seattle, which is another 2-hour drive. So we're pretty close. But it's funny that a lot of it was filmed there. But then when you go down into the city of Vancouver, but they say it's Seattle, which is so funny because we're right there, but they go north to film south. And I think it is just an American thing. I just think that, you know, and I'm not using this as an insult by any means. I just think that, you know, if you're going to make a movie for Americans, have it in an American city, and they're going to know it more than Canadian cities.
How dare you? How dare you? Brandon, this was really informative and really interesting to me. The viewership has gone up since you started and you kept them. So obviously awesome. It is very interesting to a lot of people that were watching as well. But we will see you later on tonight at the Night Hunter Watch Along at 7 p.m. Eastern. So
yes.
Gotcha. And we'll be done by the time the Canucks take the ice.
So, yes, absolutely.
Yes. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I was a little nervous going in because I haven't really talked about this stuff before online because, again, it's like, it's not the extravagant thing. Like one question I get all the time is like, oh, have you met any celebrities? Have you met any celebrities going through your... Unfortunately, that's not what I do, right? The closest I've ever gotten to being coming in close to a celebrity is I had to go to the set of Riverdale to like count cable, right? Because it was going in between seasons. So it literally is like you're going through, oh, it's Archie's bedroom, it's the school, it's the police station. What are you doing? You're there with a clipboard and counting all the different cable in the ceiling. Like, oh, there's Joy Cable. It's not the most extravagant work in the world. You know what I mean?
Isn't there like one building or something that gets used pretty much? I jokingly say in all the CW shows, but like it was the school in Smallville. I feel like it was the school in oh God, I'm forgetting it right now. It was another CW or UPN back in the day. One of those shows.
Probably.
I can always catch it. Like it drives me crazy.
Well, all of Riverdale is filmed. Most of it is actually filmed just in one stage, right? Like the houses and everything. And it's funny because you go through like one door in the house and then you walk into the police station because it's all built together, right? And I remember there's a small suburb like in the bush, right? It's called Mission, and there's like a big abbey there. It was like back in like the 1800s, and like, there's this big church there, and there's a little diner called Rocco's Diner, and that is the diner where they all drink milkshakes in Riverdale. And when Riverdale came out, Mission just got flooded with Riverdale fans. Gotta go to Rocco's Diner. We gotta get the milkshakes. I don't know what it's called in the show. I forget what it's actually called, but
Pop's Diner or something.
Yeah, Pops. Yeah. So the real one's called Rocco's, and just like I remember my sister was like, "Can we go to Rocco's? Can we like drive out to Mission and go to Rocco's?" And we're like, "All right, sure." We go there. The line is around the block. you know, so we're like,
That's
oh,
insane. That's absolutely insane.
yeah.
I'm looking it up real quick to see if I can pull where that school was. Templeton Secondary School. Does that ring a bell?
Not for me. It might be in one of the other suburbs around here, but
It's probably not even in Vancouver, and I'm being a dick. No, Templeton Drive, Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay, it might be in South Van then. It might be in South Vancouver.
Gotcha.
Yeah, further north you get more into downtown. You get more of the shops and businesses, and South Van you get more of the suburbs and the schools and stuff. So it could be there. Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah,
Brandon, once again, I appreciate it. And we will chat with everyone. Follow him at Brando Critic on Instagram and YouTube.
Yes.
Always pumping out great content, and we will chat with you a little bit later on as well.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you.